Hey guys, what's up? This is Francisco with Valareso Capital. We're gonna go through the market. We're gonna do a market update. We're gonna talk about some of the ETFs that have been leading, and we're also gonna talk about how these ETFs are probably setting up for some short trades, ideas, and then we're also, of course, we're gonna take a look at some of the indexes, the QQQ, SPY, DIA, IWM, and IWO. And remember, guys, that this video is for educational purposes only and is based on my personal opinion. So thank you so much, guys, for being here. So now that we got that out of the way, let's start looking at some charts. And as you can see here in my screen, I have the SPY, and pretty interesting action in the SPY, right? We actually had one of the weakest months in history of the market, and the pattern was there though, right? And that's something that we're gonna take a quick look right now that we're doing this market update. So here you can see the SPY, right? We had that double top kind of setup. And of course, what happened here, we broke down, we flagged, and then we came right here into that 200 daily moving average. And of course, then we had a brutal move to the downside, but the pattern was there. So which was the pattern, right? You can see here on my right, I have the daily chart, and on my left, I have the daily chart, and on my right, I have the hourly chart. I use the MOXIE indicator, which is the indicator right here. I use it on the daily time frame, and I also use it on the hourly time frame, basically to understand what is the momentum in the stock, where is the positive energy or negative energy of a stock, and this helps me understand. This helps me to make an educated guess of where the next move is gonna go, right? So as you can see here, MOX indicator in the daily continues to trend below zero. That means that we continue to have negative energy. And you can see right here, the hourly also is below zero. So what is the setup? Usually when the MOX indicator is below zero, any move above the 50 hourly, which is the purple line right here, is very unlikely to sustain. And it happens the same on the daily. Any move above that 50 daily moving average is unlikely to sustain, as you can see right here, because the MOXIE was below zero. So right here, when we tested that 200 daily, what happened here? Price went above that hourly 50, but the MOXIE indicator was below zero. And you can see that the SPY got rejected, and we are basically trading near these lows. So what is my expectation for next week? You can see here, these are the quant pivot labels, and you can see these are the expectation for the next week quant pivot labels. Of course, we're gonna get those levels tomorrow, but as you can see here, this is the H2 quant pivot level is expected to be somewhere around that 8 exponential moving average. So my expectation is that any bounce to that 8 exponential moving average is going to get rejected, and we're going to get a move to the downside, perhaps to this 400 area. And it's really interesting to understand that we actually have a gap. We have a non-fill gap somewhere around that 400 area in the SPY. So my expectation is that this will continue to move lower. Perhaps we have a bounce at the start of the week, but I will expect that bounce to fail and the market to continue to trade lower. Now let's take a look at the QQQ, and we can go considerably fast through these charts because they kind of look the same. And you can see the QQQ kind of the same story. You can see right here we had the flag. Right here we had the flag into that downtrending 50 daily moving average, and you can see that here we flag into a downtrending 50 hourly with the MOXIE indicator below zero, and then of course the price continue to trade lower. As you can see, the expected quant pivot labels, also the high two is somewhere around that 8 exponential moving average. So if we happen to get a bounce to that level, I'm expecting this market to continue to trade lower, and the level that I have here at 300 is basically the retest of that base that we had before that really strong breakout at the beginning of 2021. This was somewhere around November 2020. So I think that if we happen to bounce, I think that we will continue to move lower in this index as well. Basically the same story for the IWM. And what is interesting in the IWM is that we have been trading on this range, and we are actually starting to break down on volume. And you can see that the MOX indicator continues to trade below zero. So any jump into that declining 8 exponential moving average or 21 exponential moving average, I expect that those are going to be opportunities to short, and this market will continue to trade to the downside. Now let's take a look at the DIA. And this one is really interesting because we actually have a squeeze that hasn't fired yet. And here you can see the double top, and you can see also the double top right here. And you can see that the MOX indicator was already trading lower. So this is what we call a DTSS, which is a double top short setup. And it triggers the moment that the candle closes below the high of this pivot right here. And you can see that the squeeze is starting to fire lower with the MOX indicator below zero. So I'm expecting this. If we happen to get a bounce into that declining exponential moving average, I think that that will be an opportunity to also play this index to the short side as well. Now, next we have the IWO, and you can see the IWO kind of similar to the IWM, right? We have been trading on a range, and now we're breaking that range. We're moving lower. MOX indicator hourly below zero, daily MOX indicator below zero as well, and you can see the clear rejection right here at the 50, which happened to be this 200 hourly, and the MOX indicator was already below zero. So any move above that 50 when the MOX indicator is below zero tends to get rejected, and we get usually a pretty fast move to the downside. So I continue to expect that any of the bounces into these declining exponential moving averages, which is the 21 exponential and the 8 exponential, is going to get rejected, and we will continue to trade lower. Now, here are some of the ETFs that I'm going to talk about. I have somewhere around 6 to 7 ETFs that I think are setting up for the short side. And since these have been some really nice long trades this year, I think there is the probability that these ETFs are going to make some really fast moves to the downside. So first of all, I have XLE, and we know that energy has been trending. But you can see here, right? You can see that the price was heading higher. The MOXY indicator was already heading lower. And you can see the same thing, right? In the hourly MOXY, you can see that the price was heading higher. The price was heading higher, but the MOX indicator was already trending lower. And you can see right here that the MOX indicator is below zero. Price, you can see that the 200 has been acted as support, now is acting as resistance, and the MOX indicator below zero. I expect this move to be rejected, and you can see kind of a bear flag that is forming here, and I expect XLE to continue to trend lower, and of course we also have a squeeze. So this one is looking interesting to the downside. Now let's take a look at XLP. And XLP is an interesting, right? We had Walmart, Costco that have been some really interesting long trades. But now here, right, we're retesting this breakout level. But you can see that the chart, we can see the pattern in the hourly. And that's something that I really like about the hourly, is that you can see right here the head and shoulders pattern. You can see the rejection at that 50 hourly, and you can see the MOXY indicator already trending lower. You can see the head and shoulders here. You can see the neckline here. So if we happen to get a bounce, I think that bounce is most likely to get rejected, and we will continue to trend lower. And probably we're going to test that 50 daily moving average that has been acting as resistance. Then we broke it, and now it seems like it's time to retest it. So be careful if you're looking for any longs in XLP. Now let's take a look at XLRE, and this is such a textbook pattern. Right here, we have the head and shoulders right here, the MOX indicator already going to the downside. We had that rejection at that 21 exponential moving average. We have the squeeze, and now we had a pretty strong move to the downside. And I don't see any reasons to buy this. If anything, if we get a move into that 200 and that 50, which happens to be the quant pivot levels, I think there's the chance that this will probably get rejected somewhere around this area right here, and will continue its path lower with that squeeze setting up to fire short. Now let's take a look at XLV, and you can basically see this pattern all over these guys, right? The head and shoulder in the hourly. You can see the MOXY indicator pointing to the downside. MOXY indicator right now below zero. The squeeze firing to the downside as well. You can see the head and shoulders right here. And I expect some more weakness in XLV, right? There's no reason to think that this is going to go higher. If anything, if we get a bounce to that 50, I think that will be an amazing opportunity to short this ETF as well. And some of the names in this ETF includes UNH, which I consider to be an interesting pattern to the downside as well. Now let's take a look at XLV. And you can see XLV, right? You can see the price going higher right here, price going higher. But what was the MOXY hourly doing? The MOXY hourly was going lower. That's a bearish divergence. And then, of course, from failed moves, you can see the kind of the ascending wedge here. We broke we broke that ascending wedge. Lot of a lot of stops got hit this day right here. You can see the squeeze already pointing lower, and you can see right here when price tried to bounce above that hourly 50, MOX indicator is below zero, so price is starting to get rejected. And this also looks like a bear flag to me. I'm looking for this to move somewhere around 81 or 80, which are the Fibonacci extensions. So this one is also looking like a short. You can probably use this high right here as your stop. And this one is looking pretty interesting to the short side. Now let's take a look at XME, and you can see that these are pretty similar, right? Price was going higher, MOX indicator already going lower in the hour, in the daily, price going higher, hourly MOX indicator making lower highs. And then you can see right here, kind of a bear flag. The squeeze is already pointing to the downside. If anything, if we get a move to that 50 or if we get a move to that 21 exponential moving average, I think those are going to be really nice opportunities to short and look for a move right into 52, which is the Fibonacci extension, the 1618 extension to the downside. So any of the rallies in these ETFs, I think there are going to be opportunities to short. Now let's take a quick look at GDX. And you can see GDX, right? You can see that GDX has been moving to the upside, MOX indicator was already lower, heading lower, and you can see here the lower high in the MOX indicator, which was signaling to you that there was not a lot of momentum in this move, and that there was a high probability that sellers were going to get into this name and push it lower. And basically you can see here kind of a flag. If we happen to get any moves into that declining 8 or 21 exponential moving average, I think it's going to be an opportunity to short and look for a test of that 200 daily. And you can see the squeeze also pointing to the downside. So those are basically the ETFs that I want to share with you. Most of them, all of them look bearish. I think that if we get a bounce early in the week, these are the ETFs that I'm going to be focusing on for some short setups because they look pretty interesting to the downside. And now I think that I have just a little bit of the commodities. We can go through these ones pretty fast. You can see gold right here, basically trading in no man's land. We have a squeeze, MOX indicator pointing lower. What this was moving what this was moving basically sideways, and you can see that we're starting to get rejected at that 50 hourly. So nothing to see in gold in terms for the long side. Same in silver, right? We have a squeeze pointing lower, MOX indicator below zero, and this has basically had a huge fail. You can see right here when we had this test in the daily, you can see that this was already moving to the downside, and that was an indication that there was a high probability that this move was going to fail. Now we have USO, and if we take a quick look at USO, we have a squeeze. We have price moving we have price basically moving sideways. But what is the MOXY daily doing? The MOXY daily is already moving to the downside. So I think there's a high probability that we're gonna see a fail move in USO. Probably we're gonna test somewhere around this area, and I think that will be an amazing opportunity to short this. And I think there's a high probability that USO is gonna fail. We're gonna break this 50, and we will continue to move to the downside as well. And then finally, UNG, which has been a favorite, right? It has been a favorite to the long side. And of course, we had a really strong move. A test of the 21 failed at that weekly high 2 level. And what is really interesting, right? You can see that this is consolidating sideways, but what is the MOXY doing? Right, the MOXY is way below zero, and price is above that 50. Price should not be above the 50 hourly when the MOXY indicator is below zero. So if you're looking for longs in UNG, I think that you have to be really careful. I know that this is an interesting pattern, right? Kind of a dragon's head right there. But I think there's a high probability that UNG is going to fail, going to break this 21, and it's going to test that 50 daily in the chart. And then finally, let's take a quick look at the VIX. And you can see the VIX, it was basically the opposite from the indexes. You can see that price was below that 50, but the MOX indicator was above the zero level, which means that we have a bullish trampoline move. And that's exactly what happened. We had a really strong move to the upside. We're testing these weekly levels here, but I think there's a high probability. If we happen to pull back in the VIX, I'll be looking at this weekly level as support. And I think there's a high probability that the VIX is going to break kind of a couple handle here in the VIX. And I know that some people say that you cannot chart the VIX. But I think this pattern looks interesting. And if we happen to break out, I think the VIX can move really, really fast to that 40 level. And then perhaps we are gonna see some short-term capitulation. And then finally, just want to make a quick comment in the put call ratio. I know that a lot of people are saying that the put call is already at extreme levels, and it is, right. We are already above one. We close above one, somewhere around 102. But I think that we need to have one of those moves when we actually capitulate, right? So perhaps we're gonna test that 120. I'm gonna be looking for that 120, gonna be looking for that 130, basically anything that is above the year-to-date high. If we happen to get a move like that, then perhaps we're gonna see some short-term capitulation based on the put call ratio as a sentiment indicator. And then I'm also watching the MFI because since it tracks the number of stocks that are trading above their 50 daily moving average. And I'm looking for some move down here into this area to perhaps see some capitulation long term in the market. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. As you can see, basically the indexes continue to trend to the downside. Maybe we're gonna get a bounce, but there are no indications of a bottom. There is no need to try to look for a bottom, to try to time the market. Basically, the best way that we can follow this is just go with the trend. If the market wants to break lower, there are ways to make money. Just focus on some short setups. Focus on those rips higher to resistance level, to use those as a way to manage risk, and then continue to look this to the downside. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I hope this video was helpful. Remember to share it and to follow me also on my other social media accounts like Twitter @Valareso Capital. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. Peace.